When we started Thin Edge Films, our sort of mission was to tell stories that might not otherwise get exposed or told. So filmmaking, is always like, even when you have like tons of money on a project, you're always kind of like walking this tightrope, right? Any number of things can go wrong, as we all know, when you're making films. So you're always kind of like just trying to balance and not fall off the cliff, not fall off the edge. If you look at the logo, it's like a wedge on one side, but then we sort of doubled it and made it like a bow tie. About this wedge in the door and pushing the door open.
That's how you tell stories, guys.
It started really with producing to New York in '99, and I met these two guys that had a production company in Brooklyn. They wanted to do a documentary on Sid Bernstein. And they're like, "You're gonna be our producer." And I was like, "Me? I'm gonna be your producer?" And they're like, "Oh, it was really the first film I ever produced." And I was scared. I was really scared to do it. I guess if they believe I can do it, I can do it. You kind of do something once, and then each time it becomes a little easier, to the point at which, now I'm like, producing is like, I could do it in my sleep almost. I want to challenge myself, and that's why I want to write and direct and do more than just that, You'd be surprised how many filmmakers don't even call themselves filmmakers. They say, I kind of want to be a filmmaker, but I'm really a plumber. You have to be very believe in yourself, and when you talk with people, you have to say, I am a filmmaker, writer, director. Just own it, because if you don't own it, nobody else will ever believe it either.
I've transitioned from like legal and business side of things to filmmaking.
Yeah.
And it's silly, but for me, for a while, it was even difficult to change my description on like social media. I was literally struggling for weeks and months, and I was like changing the description and then not pressing save. I was like, no, but like, I'm not really a full-time filmmaker. I just did this one project.
This is an obstacle that is in the way of so many creatives. And the reason why they're not being picked up, why they're not being seen, because if you don't, as you said, believe in yourself, it's hard to convince someone else to believe in you.
Just keep believing in yourself and keep doing what you love. Like one day it's going to happen, just, you can't stop if that's what you love,
Lisa Thomas, thank you so much for being here. It is a pleasure. You are a producer, director, writer, and CEO of Thin Edge Films. And that is beautiful. And I would love to start with asking you, what inspired you to create Thin Edge Films, and what's behind the name? I mean, I love your name. I love the name.
Yeah, definitely. So I started Thin Edge Films back in 2000. So it's hard to believe, but 25 years ago. I formed the company with my former partner, Margot Pelletier. We were making a documentary on Silvia Baraldini, who was a US political prisoner for many years and then ended up back in Italy. And we just, we wanted to form the company to sort of protect ourselves, not to just be, rogue filmmakers without a company. But we came up with the name Thin Edge Films because when we talked to Silvia Baraldini's lawyer, at the time she was still incarcerated in the United States, and her lawyer had said, Silvia has this like slight chance, this like tiny little thin edge of the wedge in the door to freedom. And so if we can just keep pushing that wedge, if you look at the logo, it's like a wedge on one side, but then we sort of doubled it and made it like a bow tie. But yeah, it's all about this wedge in the door and pushing the door open. So it has like many sort of symbolisms in a way, but it's all started from that very first project that we were working on, and we needed to come up with the name of the company. And so it was really Silvia's lawyer that gave us this idea.
That is amazing. It's interesting when you say that, because I have a book in front of me and it's called The Slight Edge, Jeff Olson. I don't know if you guys have read it. It is amazing.
No.
It helped me really, because it was always like this slight edge of decisions. Like you can take, where is the decision in the middle that leads to where you want to go?
Right.
So it sounds like this was really at the beginning of your career, in a sense of that you take it into your own hands. Am I wrong?
Yeah, yeah. And filmmaking, is always like, even when you have like tons of money on a project, you're always kind of like walking this tightrope, right? You're always like
Mhm.
sort of a little on the edge with whatever you're doing. Any number of things can go wrong, as we all know, when you're making films. So you're always kind of like just trying to balance and not fall off the cliff, not fall off the edge.
Do
So
you
Thin
feel the
Edge just,
same way after 25 years? Is it
yeah,
the
yeah, Thin
same?
Edge
Is it?
just seems like always appropriate. Like I would never change the name, you know, unless I had to for some reason. But like, yeah, it feels like ever more, it just always feels relevant as a filmmaker. Yeah.
I love that. Wow, that is
Yeah,
beautiful.
that's how you tell stories, guys.
Yeah.
That's you're just like a natural storyteller. You showed us something, you told the story, and it's wow.
And the
I'm
impressed
impressed.
came from a
Yeah.
lawyer. Who would have thought that?
Yeah, it came from well, like the interview with the first interview that we did with Elizabeth Fink was the lawyer, um, yeah, who told us this. That was Sylvia's lawyer in the United States.
Okay. And what made you decide to do that documentary?
We did the documentary on Silvia Baraldini. It's called Freeing Silvia Baraldini because Margot had known Sylvia back in the 1980s in the US and actually had been part of the sort of the propaganda facility that printed the posters and a
Mhm.
lot of the leaflets that went out through the organization that Sylvia was a part of, which was called the May 19th Communist Organization that was based in Brooklyn, New York in like the mid 80s. And it's never been a very popular thing to be a communist in the United States. So you can imagine, even then, people probably thought these radical leftists or these commies were like doing, criminal activity or however the government sort of came down on them all. But Margot was there working with them and was actually helping to put together a room for one of the other political activists who had gone to prison's child that Sylvia was going to be taking custody of the day that the FBI terrorist task force came to arrest Sylvia. So Margot had a very like intimate connection to the organization, to Silvia Baraldini. She was there when they came to raid her apartment the day that Sylvia was arrested on the street, all of this stuff. So Margot really knew the story. And she was really actively trying to find someone to help her produce the film and to make
Mhm.
the film. And I think a lot of people didn't understand the politics. And when I heard them, I being much younger, was sort of just like, is this history true? Did this really go on in the United States? If so, we need to document this history. And so it was sort of Margot looking for someone to partner up with to do the movie, and me believing in the story that sort of is what founded our company, and it was our first project together.
Wow, I'm impressed. That is so. How then, like, how do you go about when we're talking about producing? Because
Yeah,
it's for our listeners and those who are listening, there's a lot of us aren't as far as you are. You have a lot of experience with producing. So how did you go about by producing it? Like, what were the steps, or was it an easy thing, like getting investors on board?
yeah. So that particular project, in many ways, was a little easier. I haven't been working in documentary for a number of years, but when you're doing social political films, there's many grants and organizations that like to fund those particular projects, and so we got some grant money. We had some, private investors that were just donating because they liked the politics or they needed a tax write-off. And of course, we invested in some capital ourselves too, because we were forming a company together and we wanted to start this project. But we did it over many years. Like it took us 8 years to do that documentary. It wasn't
Oh,
like we did it in
Oh,
6 months. So we had it done in about 5.5, 6 years, but then Sylvia suddenly she was transferred during the course of our making the movie, and then she was released in Italy. And we had this cut that we were ready to like put out into the world, and then suddenly she got her freedom. And so one of you is based in Italy, right?
Yes, I'm in Rome.
In Rome. So yeah, that's where Sylvia lives now. And so she was granted freedom at a certain point while we were still completing the film. And we're like, we can't actually issue this film if she just got free. We need to go back and meet with her and film her. And her final interview, the one where she was finally free, was so much more moving and powerful. And so anyway, but you asked about producing it. I mean, we went through contacting many of the people that she had worked with at the time that were in the same organization, and also to talking to people like Noam Chomsky and people that could provide political context for the time in which she was doing her work. So yeah, we weren't working consistently every day on it per se, but we would always be doing something each month to move the project forward. And then ultimately, when we were finally like, it's done, we're going to do the film festival circuit and all of that, we put it out. And that film we self-distributed. Yeah, but somebody actually just contacted me about it this past weekend. They want to license some clips from it because they're making a movie about Judy Clark, who was one of her comrades or kind of political associates at the time, and they were, they're very interested in the interviews that we did, in early 2000 around that movie.
And where can one see it?
Basically, you have to contact me. I have like, I have DVDs. I have the digital screener, and if there are places that have the movie like for sale and things like that, but it's not really like live on the internet streaming, which I guess I probably should do it, and then people could just rent it that way. Yeah. I just never did that because
it's like a legacy project, definitely.
Yeah. I should actually get it out there in a better way. I've just focused on things since, and so you kind of forget about the old ones. That's like the first one. And at the time, I don't even think people were barely watching YouTube and stuff like that when we were finishing that movie. So you just move on to the next and the next. But I do need to go back and really properly put that out for people.
On this topic of having, a lot of projects that you do, you've had a lot of experience with animation, indie films, music videos, documentaries. How do you go about choosing the project that you want to do, that you want to produce? What's the decision-making process behind it? Walk us through the steps. What draws you to the project? What are you looking for?
Well, when we started Thin Edge Films, our sort of mission was to tell stories that might not otherwise get exposed or told, to not just tell the same everyday mainstream stories that you'll find, coming out of Hollywood per se. So that's always like something that's at the core of what helps me to choose a project, like whether I'm going to sign on to it. Is this different enough that we haven't seen this before, or something similar to this before? So and yeah, with the animation work, which I've done a lot of times that's just the work that I'm doing behind the scenes to fund the personal work that comes out of Thin Edge Films. But most of it has kind of like a little political commentary to it, or a little political social bend, or it's like subversive in a weird way. A lot of it's adult animation, and what I mean by that is it's not the stuff that kids are watching Saturday morning when they're home from school. It's more like the kind of things like the shows like The Simpsons, if you're aware of The Simpsons, or South Park, that air in the evening for like the whole family to watch. And it's like a little bit more sophisticated writing, a little bit more about the times in which you live in, commenting on them. Like one of the shows that I did is this show called Shivering Truth. I have a puppet here for it, but you can just tell this is the poet Dale, who was in the 3rd episode of the 1st season. It was a stop motion series, but very, kind of unusual character and an unusual show. It was an anthology show that had a lot of social commentary. And it's very dark, surreal, abstract, but you can see there's a lot of like messaging if you're like paying attention, to the storylines and the different characters, like what they're saying. So that really interests me particularly with the projects that I choose.
So that's the message. Then, if someone would pitch you the story, you're looking for something that is not necessarily just different, but something that is would comment on some social, things that are on the social agenda, or like political things, something with a message, right?
Yeah, I went to the Ottawa Animation Festival some years back, and like one thing that I really noticed when I was up at Ottawa was that there were a lot of animations coming from other countries that really had commentary with them that were like sort of social political, where I find like a lot of work that gets funded in the United States in particular often is just very commercial. It's like about entertainment more than anything.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's not really like I'm not just making something to entertain people, to be funny or whatever. Like it can have comedy elements to it, but usually the comedy, if it's, has social political kind of tones to it, like I'm more interested in that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It makes people think. That's
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
So you are producing those, or are you in any other way a part of the animation? Like, what is your part? Is it only the producing side, which is not only, which is huge, or is there more? Are you more involved with that?
Yeah, sometimes I'm asked like to be more of a creative producer where I can give input or even suggest some like writing aspects to the creators of the show. Usually with the animated projects, I mean, I've done a couple myself that are my own, but usually with the animated like television series and things that I've worked on, I hear about a project, the creator contacts me, and they tell me, we have a network or a studio that's willing to, green light this. Are you available to produce the season or whatever? And then I come on board and I deal with all the nuts and bolts of like everything from licensing music to getting the actors booked to, if we're going to submit to the Emmys or whatever, all the like little millions of details along the way. And yeah, occasionally I can pitch little things to the creator of, I think in this scene or that episode, it might be funny to do this, that, or the other thing, or maybe you should choose this song for the end credits. Or, I can kind of help a little bit with the creative, but more or less I'm behind the scenes dealing with all the logistics and the paperwork and the business side. And I think it's like my innate ability. I just wrapped a film on Saturday, so 2 days ago, and I don't know. I was the line producer of the film, but I was doing so much more than line producing, and I just think it's like my natural skill set. Producing is like, I could do it in my sleep almost. I don't know why. It's just, some people have that ability. That's my gift. I direct as well, but directing is a whole different muscle and it's so much harder for me. Like I have to really, really work at directing, and producing is like my gift, So like,
wow.
I could just produce and then retire when I'm done with the whole thing, and write it out that way. But I want to challenge myself, and that's why I want to write and direct and do more than just that,
To grow and obviously tell more your stories. And how did it all start? Like, how did your journey into the creative field, in producing, and you started with the producing part, or did you start with writing and directing?
No, it started really with producing. I mean, I lived for a couple years in Los Angeles, and I was, just kind of coming up the ranks the few years I was in Los Angeles, jumping around different companies in the business. But when I moved to New York, which was in 1999, some of your listeners probably weren't even alive then. But yeah, I moved to New York in 99, and I met these two guys that had a production company in Brooklyn, Jason Ressler and Evan Strom, and they wanted to do a documentary on Sid Bernstein. And Sid Bernstein was the guy who found the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and brought them to the United States. And he was sort of instrumental in what was called the British invasion of music in the US at that, you know, time in the 60s. And these guys had never made a film before. And they're like, you're going to be our producer. And I was like, me? I'm going to be your producer? And they're like, only you're going to do it. And it was that was really the first film I ever produced before Thin Edge Films, before the Silvia Baraldini movie and all that. And I was scared. I was really scared, but I was just like, well, they believe I can do it. I guess if they believe I can do it, I can do it. And so, yeah, we spent the better part of a year doing interviews around that film and making that film. And then I think after, you know, it's sort of like once you kind of do something once and then each time it becomes a little easier to the point of which, you know, now I'm like a couple decades in, right? And I'm just like, oh yeah, somebody like, I wasn't even nervous on this last film. They were like, okay, you know, we only have X amount and we have an ensemble cast of 12 people and they had to come and go all the time back and forth to the city and we're shooting it in upstate New York and I wasn't even losing sleep. I just was like, okay, yeah, easy, no problem.
Okay.
I want to ask you, back in the 1999 you said, and you were the sole producer for this film.
Yes.
How did you know what to do? Because like I'd imagine that right now there is, you know, you can go online, you watch YouTube, you know, there are tutorials. How did you know what are the steps? Did you just learn as you go? Were there someone who you can rely for advice, or did you just figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I knew, you know, producing is largely about keeping things on track. It's largely, you know, the big sweeping things are, you know, the schedule
Mhm.
and the budget and keeping everything on schedule and on budget. And if you can do that, then usually you'll get another job. Where it goes wrong is when people spend way too much more than they are allowed, you know, to spend, or if they go wildly off in terms of the schedule and they're like not hitting deadlines and whatever. Those particular guys on that first project had a certain amount of money they could spend. And we were shooting it on Super 16, so we were shooting it on film. And there were a lot of interviews that they could have done with a lot of celebrities in the music business. And so at a certain point, we had to put like an end to it because it could have kept going forever. Everybody could have kept talking about Sid Bernstein forever and ever and ever. And there was a lot of great archival footage. And so it was just a matter of like, how do you find that footage? How much is it per second to license? And just like getting on the phone, like so much of anything is just like informing yourself and getting on the phone and asking the questions. I mean, I feel like today young people in many ways have a disadvantage because they're so used to everything being texting and social media and like not actually just like there's something to be said for picking up the phone and just having an old-fashioned conversation with somebody about getting to the information you need, because people can, you know, very easily have things buried in their email or in the text chain or the thread of whatever app you're using. It's not the same as like having like another person on the other line and just asking them like, well, how much is it going to be if I want this footage from, you know, NBC News? Oh, there's a 30-second minimum and it's $40 a second. Oh, wow, that is going to cost me a lot of money. I better really want and need that footage, you know? And so you figure it sort of out just as you go and by making phone calls. And even just when people come to me and they ask like, well, how do you make a budget? Well, what will people work for you for? Like, just you have to start to have those conversations like with your cinematographer, your editor, your, you know, assistant camera, your sound person, whoever it is. You just start having the conversations and then you like, that's how you make your budget. It's like a bunch of conversations with all the different people in the different departments.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is that I think it's really interesting. I want to ask you this first. Would you still recommend to all the young ones out there and those that are starting out, no matter your age, that they would pick up the phone and call?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm still calling people all the time. I think that you know, people aren't used to it anymore because everybody's used to communicating electronically. And you know, you can text somebody and say, "Hey, can I call you in half an hour? Are you available at 2 p.m. or whatever? You just pick your brain about, you know, what lenses we're going to use with the camera or what camera we're using or whatever, what format we're shooting in, whatever." Like You can get so much more accomplished, I feel like, in a 5 minute phone call than 1,000 little text messages
Mhm.
back and forth. You know,
So
like,
true.
Yeah, and at the same time, it is really like this the connection. Like
right.
it's a part of the networking, which is really
Yes.
important because if you need anything, you can then maybe if you don't have the time to call, but then you can text that human being and they will be like,
Yes.
"Oh, it's Lisa. Yeah, I like her. Like we had this amazing conversation the other day. Yeah, I'm going to help her." Oh,
Right. But especially when you're trying to reach people that you don't already know and find out
mhm.
information about things that you don't already know, odds are it's, there's something about texting that's a little informal, right?
Yeah.
And emails, they get lost. It's not like
Mhm.
everybody's ignoring you, but sometimes, I open my email and I'm like, oh my God, like the day hasn't even started and I already got 30 emails. Like, where do I begin? And so it doesn't take much for something to get buried if things just keep coming in at you, right?
Mm.
So, but it's hard to ignore if your phone is ringing. You can, but then you're like, who just called me? Right? What
Yeah.
do I have to deal with this? Like you actually, it's a little bit more like in your face, right?
Mhm.
That's true.
Sure.
And
So,
and you also talked about the budget, which I think is really interesting if we can just go a little bit into that too. And I think it's interesting what you're saying is that you're saying you first have to have the conversations to be able to tell people like what is the budget or to calculate it, I assume. Is that the way you always work or do you have like a,
yeah, I mean, often what happens is somebody will come to you, and this is if it's not your own work, right? Like if it's your own work, it's different, but I'll talk about both things. So if somebody comes to you and they're like, we have $2 million to make, I don't know, 6 episodes of whatever animated show or whatever it is. Can we do this for so much per episode? And then you start to go through it like, okay, well, how many actors can we actually have? Like, what's the animation cost? Or if it's live action, like how many days of shooting can we actually sustain? Because every day with my crew is X amount of dollars or whatever. So usually when other people are coming to you, they have a fixed number and
Mhm.
you have to tell them the parameters of what they can get for that fixed number as a producer. They can't have everything. Sometimes the more money the budget is, the people just think that like can have everything and anything they want. And I always tell this story of like, Steven Spielberg was up the road filming for me a couple years back, um, and everybody in town was calling me because I'm the local filmmaker. And they were like, Lisa, Spielberg his company wants to put a light on my roof. Can I charge them like, whatever, $5,000? And I'm like, no, I'm sure he doesn't have $5,000 to hand out to every single person in town to place a light on the roof. Like, just, if the person from production is offering you a certain amount, just like work with them because all these projects just don't have unlimited amounts of money. They have to keep within whatever their parameters. But people hear a film's coming to town and they're like, I eyeball pupils turn into smaller the budget sometimes almost the easier it is because you're just like, I'm independent, I'm paying for it myself, like will you help
Yeah.
me? And then people also like to help people. So I've been able to do things where I've gotten many locations for free and many things for free just because I'm like Lisa, the local filmmaker, knocking on the door being like, your yard is perfect for the thing I need and this is what I'm doing. And they're like, oh please, we'd love to help you. So yeah, and when you're doing it for yourself, for your own work, it's really just about the resources you have at hand, both from the money that you're able to raise
Mhm.
through your circle of contacts and whatever funds you want to put in yourself, and also like what do you have access to,
Mhm.
like what crew and friends do you know that are in your film orbit in your film community, and who are the people that will help you realize your dream. And then I think you can pretty easily figure out like, okay, I can do this thing for X dollars or X amount of money because I have this community that
Yeah,
will,
partner.
yeah, that will step in to kind of support my vision. And yeah, I think where people go wrong is when they write like a feature film that's a period thing that requires hundreds of, actors and all of this stuff, from costumes to everything you see on camera that, is not of our world today, but they don't have the resources to be able to make that happen, and they don't understand why they can't do it.
Do
Right.
you then, on your personal projects, do you tend to work with the same people? Do you have like particular people in mind when you can, reach them and see if they're available and you know that this person is ideal for? Because obviously we got referred to you by my dear friend Fabrizio Palma and my teacher as well. And he
Yeah.
said like you absolutely have to interview Lisa. She's my friend and she's amazing and she's, so talented. And then you have like the person for each job throughout the years that you want to collaborate. How do you choose
Yeah.
those people?
I definitely have a core group of people that I always go back to. I have a cinematographer, Nicola Benizzi, who I work a bunch with, and who credits me for being the reason that he even got into the film industry. He was a camera intern with me on the Sid Bernstein documentary, which was the first film I produced. And he was in New York teaching Italian at the time. And he was at a party and he was like, I hate my job. I don't want to, whatever, be an Italian instructor forever. And I'm like, oh, you should come help out on this film. I can't pay you, but you'll learn some skills. And he was like, oh, I don't know. I don't have any, whatever. I don't have any experience. And I was like, well, just come for a few days. And if it's not for you, then, forget it. Anyway, he came. He was with us the entire way through the whole project. And now he's like a working cinematographer, like on television series and major films, So he's always like, it's because of you that I got into this career. Because you just were like, don't say no until you give it a try. And so he's often, if he's available, he's often the cinematographer I work with. And Fabrizio, I pretty much always edit everything with Fabrizio. When you find somebody that you have a really good rapport with, it's worth waiting for them to do the project instead of, I mean, there's plenty of talented people, but sometimes even the most talented people aren't in sync with each other. And I feel like once you find your sort of like community and I have a production designer that's a brother and sister team. It's Jessica and Jeff Farkas, and they live in upstate New York, not far from here. And when they're not available, I'm always like, oh, who is going to like do as good of a job as these two for me? I have worked with other people, but when I know they're available, I just like sleep like a baby because I know they're going to do an amazing job for me down to every little detail of every little object on any surface. And I won't have to think twice. We're like constantly like messaging each other about like this object or that piece of furniture or the color scheme of, the movie or the palette of what we're making, if it's a music video or whatever. And it's almost like a shorthand after a while when you're working with the same team because they get you and you get them and there's a trust that builds up over time.
Yeah, it's true. I would love to talk about Thirsty, the
Yeah, of
musical
course. Sure.
and drama, and you produced it. It's independent.
Yes.
Did you have your team, the core team on Thursday? I mean, it's award winning. It's beautiful. Please talk about it, um, because it is such a beautiful story. I would love to hear it from you. Would love to hear why did you say yes to it? I mean, I think I know why I would have said yes to. And yeah, just the story behind it and how you produced it then.
Yeah. So Thirsty was one of the more difficult projects I've ever produced. We brought, many new people into Thin Edge Films for that project. And when we finally got the script together, before shooting it, I looked at this script and I was like, this is really like a, over $1 million project because it had multiple locations, many, many, performers, you name it. It was very difficult on many levels. We had $150,000 to make this movie. So somehow we had to jump through so many different crazy hoops to get this thing made and like ask for so many favors. And I had everybody on the cast and the crew working for $100 a day. I don't think I could get those kind of deals today in today's world. But we filmed it. We filmed it in 2013, and somehow I was able to convince everybody from the cinematographer to the lead actors, $100 a day. Like, let's do this thing. And if
That's
you,
some skill you have.
yeah. I mean, I don't think I could ask people to work for that little today, but everybody that came on board said yes and believed in the project. And, there was some like additional, like, obviously kit rentals for the camera package from the, cinematographer, or like sound, kit from the individual who was doing the sound, and, lighting, G&E stuff from the gaffer. But for the most part, we were kind of a big, team, and everybody was working for this base pay. And we had, I feel like, I want to say, I remember at the time we had 20 plus locations in this movie, and I had a budget of $5,000 for my locations.
20
So
plus.
yeah, it was like 23 locations or something. We had multiple bars. We had to shoot on a stage because we were going to get the New York State tax credit, so we had to be on a stage for so many days. We we had the child at home, inside and out. We had the projects. We had, all this stuff, like whatever. There was like so many different, crazy setups, and 3 different time periods. It was a period film, um, 3 different actors representing Scott, who then ultimately becomes thirsty as a performer. And yeah, it was crazy, but we did it. And I remember, like, at the time, the first week, I was just like, I don't know if we're going to make it to the end with the amount of money that we have. But I knew once we got halfway through production, it was going to, I knew we were going to make it to the end. And then I was like, I don't know how we're going to get the money to like do our edit, but I'll like worry about that once we have it all in the can. And Fabrizio, that's how we met Fabrizio. Fabrizio edited the film, was not our first editor. We had another person working with us for about a year once we started post-production. And it was like going okay. Technically, the person was capable, but we wanted to do a rough cut, like work in progress screening.
Mm-hmm.
And this individual was too busy to attend. And I knew, I remember saying to Margot, I'm like, wow, this is a movie that's like, our heart and soul is like in this thing. And this person's not going to go there to hear the feedback. This editor's done, because they're not going to take it the whole way with us. And that's when we started looking for another editor. And the person didn't want to leave. They wanted to keep on with the job, and they didn't quite get why we were like, saying, the time was up. And then finally I was just like, hey, we're out of money. And then they were gone. Then they were just like, okay, fine.
Magical phrase.
So that is the phrase, you guys. If you're listening or watching us, you need to get rid of someone.
We're out of funds. Oh, okay, good. Okay, no problem. See you later.
Bye.
Good luck. Have a nice life. But then we interviewed people again, and Fabrizio responded to like a flyer we put up. It wasn't even like an electronic digital ad. It was like we posted like these lo-fi flyers around New York City, and it was like, Thin Edge Films looking for an editor on, queer musical, blah blah blah, thirsty. And we got a bunch of resumes and applicants and whatever, and reels. And I remember watching Fabrizio's reel, and I was like, oh, he's very talented, and he edits to the beat. He edits to the music, to the time. This was very important. And so we met with a number of people, and I remember we went and met Fabrizio at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. And I was like on a quick break at work. I was like producing at the studio across the street in an animation company. And so Margot had started the interview, and I sort of came in, and within like 30 seconds, I was like, oh, he's the guy. Okay, great. I like know everything I need to know. I'll talk to Margot and Fabrizio later. Bye. And then afterwards, Margot's like, I think he's the one. And I'm like, I do too. He's hired, so yeah.
May I ask, if you said it sounds like it was really fast. Do you hire intuitively? Is that because you've seen his reel, you were aware of, okay, he has the way he's editing is, through the music. he's musicality, like that's on top. You were producing obviously a musical, so that was important. But what was the last thing where you went like, I'm gonna trust him?
I think it was just about kind of his overall spirit,
Mm.
like the sense of who he was as a person, like the things he was saying to us, and his sort of, you could tell he just was a person of integrity from like the minute you
Yeah.
met him. And I think that you know, uh that really mattered a ton, because this was a story about someone who had gone through some quite a bit of hardship, and didn't always have an easy time of it. And, we were doing it independently, at that point, funding it through my animation job. So he was, essentially like Margot and I were kind of like splitting my salary at the animation studio to pay Fabrizio to edit the movie to hopefully try to sell it down the line. It was like, and he was willing to do it for not a lot of money because he just wanted the opportunity to edit a feature. And yeah, so, and they edited it in a little apartment in Brooklyn Heights. And I would come sometimes on lunch breaks and give notes and then go back to work.
Wow,
But he is
so
also
cool.
like such a sweet person, like who wouldn't, you know, given like that he's professional, everything, who wouldn't hire him? We interviewed him and we were like, it was the best time, having the best time interviewing him. So
He's so
Yeah,
bubbly.
he's
yes.
amazing. Yeah.
Just beautiful energy. So you were able to produce on budget? Like the 150,000 was.
Yeah, for the production end of it, it ended up costing more after we went through post, and then our biggest line item was music rights on that movie, because we had a lot of songs that were sort of made famous by Cher, the singer Cher.
Mm.
And the way that we handled sort of fundraising on that was, we got some investors early on that like gave us money. We took a loan out to fund a lot of the production end of it. But I remember saying to Margot, we're not going to do a plea to a bunch of donors until we hit post production, because I knew the music rights were the biggest line item of the whole thing. They were over $60,000.
Mm.
So I said, when we need to save our ask to the end to get us over the finish line to finish the film. And so that's what we did. And I remember when we were getting ready to do the fundraising campaign, uh, Margot wanted to ask for 50,000. I was like, well, what if we don't get 50,000? You don't, the way that it works for some of these platforms is that if you get either, if you have a goal and you don't hit the goal, you don't get anything. Some of them are like all or nothing. But they take less percentage. And then the ones that are like, you get whatever you raise, but they take a higher percentage. So we went for the kind of like all or nothing strategy so that we would get more of the money. But I wanted to have a lower amount that we went for in case we didn't hit our target. So we settled on going for 35,000 as opposed to 50, even though we knew we needed 60 to finish. And we ended up raising over 40,000, and we still had to come up with another 20, which we were able to, outside of that scenario. But yeah, we got about $40,000 in a month's time just by going out there and saying we're making this thing. We could show clips of the movie so people could like hear from us. We made like a little video that was a few minutes long where I spoke, Margot and Fabrizio, and maybe we had like one of the actors or something. And we had all of our cast and crew petitioning for people to support. Like every day we had people like holding signs on social media, like 9 days to go. We've raised X amount, but we still need your support for music rights or whatever. Like, and people really knew what the money was going for. It was like very clear at that point. We were almost done, and
It was
yeah.
a bit of like a crowdfunding effort for
Correct.
film. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And then
Oh
the
my
film
gosh.
became very successful. It received multiple rewards, as I already mentioned. And what was your strategy? How did you promote it? How did you
Yeah. So,
festivals still go for?
yeah, there's like all the A-list festivals, which are very hard to get in, like Sundance and Venice and
Yeah.
Cannes and, Berlin, obviously. So, you always try for those. And then if you don't get into those, you sort of start to work your way down the tiers. I think there's people that give workshops about film festivals that there's like A list, B list, C,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and so on and so forth. So we started with the A list festivals and we got into some, I would say, B and C level festivals with it and did very well at that level and won awards and like the US and outside the US. We are one of our biggest festivals that we got into internationally was Rain Dance in London. And we got some very good press when we were there. Variety gave a very good review, and we got some good magazines and publications in London writing about the movie. And I think the combination of getting a few awards on the film festival circuit and the good press is what ultimately helped it to get the distribution deal. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That is
And sorry, can I have a quick question? Was you also in charge of the strategy, or did you have like an additional person on the team who?
Of the distribution, kind of like the festival distribution, where to submit and all of that. But we did get somebody to sort of help us with some of the like press and social media exposure, sort of our messaging at the time of when we were releasing the film. And her name was Dora Dotson. She had just started her own company. And I think we met her. We met her in like the bathroom of a film organization place where we were taking a workshop, and we had like talked. We had one or two questions where we were asking about our movie Thirsty, like that we were trying to raise the last funds that we needed, and she was there because she was trying to kickstart and get her company off the ground. She's like, I love the film you're making, and I want to like work with you guys. I'll give you like 1 or 2 weeks for free of my services, and if you think it's worthwhile, then you can hire me. And I was like, okay, we have nothing to lose. And she was so brilliant because the ideas that she had were just, they seemed obvious after she would say them, but the idea of like getting your cast and crew involved in your fundraising strategy, and every day not having it be like me asking the same thing over and over again, like, please donate again, it's me, Lisa. It was like every day it was like the child actress in the movie, Melina Weissman, asking her circle of people. Then the next day, Thirsty in Provincetown, asking Thirsty's community. Then the next day, maybe the assistant director on the movie from a different set, like saying, hey, don't forget about Thirsty, we're over here on this other set here in Brooklyn. Then the lead actress, Deidre Lovejoy, okay, from whatever TV show she's working on. Thirsty the movie is about to be done. Donate now, and then, eventually Margot, and then eventually Fabrizio asking his community. And like, it just seemed, and then the next thing that we did was each day we would highlight one person that donated and ask them for a quote. Why did you fund the movie? So we were highlighting the people that were basically backing us also, and saying, today's backer of, like, note is Margie Vecchio, and Margie Vecchio believes in Thirsty the movie because she believes that these kind of stories are important, or this person believes, in donating to us because they think women should be in the film industry, or whatever it was. And like, so we were not only asking different people around us to like help us in our effort, but we were highlighting people that were supporting us and it just was like, I would have never thought to do that.
Yeah,
it was
really
pretty
good.
genius. Yeah. So Dor was the person that kind of got us thinking in that way, and I think helped us in the success towards the end when we were in post-production to get the film complete and over the finish line.
Do you still use that today? If you're working on films, if it would be needed, would you recommend that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dor has graduated to much bigger and better projects, and takes like certain level clients. Like, she's really her company has gotten very successful. But yeah, the things that I learned from her and from that particular campaign with her still resonate today, and definitely it's very useful.
Very nice. That's beautiful.
Let's move forward to the other very exciting project. That one is in post-production, as far as I understand, and it's the Misadventures of Bucky and Bean.
The
And
Misadventures of Bucky and Bean, yes.
yes. Can you share the insights into how it came about? Because you are also the writer on this project, right?
Yeah, so the Misadventures project, uh, in many ways, is sort of an extension of Thirsty. You know, we made Thirsty, we shot it in 2013 and then we released it in 2016. And then since that time, I've done a lot of other things like music videos and still been in animation. And yeah, I hadn't done anything with like an LGBTQ theme specifically
Mm-hmm.
since Misadventures came around. And we actually even have one of the actors from Thirsty in Misadventures as one of our leads. And it just felt like it was time to come back to that sort of storyline. And also with what's going on in the United States, it's really strange political times here. And
Yes.
you can be the kind of person where you're, I'm a very open queer filmmaker that I'm, doing my thing here. And my neighbor next door could be this right wing Trump supporter who has no interest in talking to me or sharing any kind of neighborly anything. And that's the world that we really live in the United States right now, where there's these very divided sort of individuals living side by side as neighbors and like have no interest in each other. And it's like, I sort of felt like the reason why I wrote it was we need to sort of break down these barriers if we're going to like move past this time that we're in that's like kind of frightening for many of us. And we need to have a better understanding of the other side. They need to have a better understanding of our position, and we need to have a better understanding of their position, and maybe somewhere we can meet in the middle and not kill each other and not like, so yeah, it's a comedy. So the Misadventures of Bucky and Bean essentially is a story about two very outspoken queer DJs that are doing a radio show out of an Airstream, which is like a trailer in upstate New York. And upstate New York is pretty rural. And the local like rednecks that have lived here their whole lives hear this show and they're furious. They want to know where these people are like doing this broadcast from, how they're going to shut this thing down, right? The whole time, the person that's like out to get them is the next door neighbor of Bucky and Bean, but doesn't realize they're right next door. Doesn't realize they're in the trailer right next door. And so anyway, it's a TV series I did the short, which is like essentially a pilot for a television show that I want to sell. And they're in an Airstream also partly because they may have to end up on the run, which they do by the end of this pilot of this short, because their life is a little bit in jeopardy. So yeah, it's a show that I'm pitching around and trying to sell. It's on the film festival circuit. It just got into the Newark LGBTQ film festival, which is in May.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so it's like going around the festival circuit right now. Hopefully we'll come to a city near all of you. And Peppermint is the lead, like the main DJ that sort of started the radio show. And Peppermint's sort of blowing up on all these different projects here in the United States and is just an incredible performer. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you wrote it,
Yeah.
you directed it, you
Yes.
produced it.
I did have another producer because I didn't want to think about all the little details while I was directing it.
Okay. So you had there. And now what you said, because, I think it's good that for our dear listeners, if you never want to know, maybe they want to be a part of this because it is a very interesting story. What are the next steps? Like, what would you need now for your project for it to keep on?
Yes. So I have like a pitch deck. You have to sort of create a world if you're trying to sell a TV series where you're like, in season 1, this is the story arc, the character arcs, what's going to happen to these different individuals in different episodes throughout the season. And I have the basic concepts for each episode and what generally happens in them. And really, I think it's about getting into television markets with it. It's not so much like the film festival circuit in the same way that a movie gets maybe picked up on the film festival circuit, or you find a sales agent. It's more, I think, like television markets, where you try to connect with people that are looking for new content, new shows. And so it's a little bit of a departure for me. It's going to be a different challenge as and now I'm like putting on the producer hat. How do I sell this thing, right? And in a time where things have gotten a lot more conservative, especially here in the United States, and to some extent like abroad as well.
Yes.
So do voices like these matter? Absolutely. Will somebody fund it? I don't know, but this is the kind of work that I want to do. And, playing it safe, sometimes it's a little risky, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
May I ask you, because I have no idea and I really I'm just like picking your brain because you're so much that you know and that we can learn from you. When you say television market, like where is there the difference between, like, for the films that we said we have the film festival run?
Yeah.
How is it with the television? Like, what is there? How are you able to enter that market?
Well, I think like these markets have, application periods, and you apply and you send in your project and you describe what it is and this sort of thing. And there's usually a fee, and you get a booth, and then you go there and you have to have materials and meet with people and things like this. I've actually never done the television markets before. I've never tried to sell a TV series. So it's going to be a new little tap dance for me. And yeah, they have, like a big one in Los Angeles, and Con has a TV component to its market. So they're in different places. I believe Berlin also has a TV aspect to its market. And so it's just a matter of like choosing the best ones that sort of fit your project, So I'll be going to those markets this year and trying to sell the film, because I just don't think it's the kind of thing like I can get it into, film festivals. And like I'll be going to one in, a little over a month, but I'm not really sure that the people attending the film festivals per se, unless I was at the real A-list festivals, I'm probably not going to be meeting buyers, like television buyers. So you're looking for people that are like the heads of development at studios, and or if you find like a producer's rep or a sales agent that sells television, then maybe that will be another avenue that I try to explore as well.
When you're saying television, are you also, I assume, talking about Amazon, Netflix, and the streaming services?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because today, obviously, that's kind of what we're saying when we say television. It is also the
streaming.
That's modern day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it's just I talk about it as TV in the sense that it's not feature length. It's not a 90-minute.
Right.
It's the show
series.
isn't. It's a series, so it's going to be 22 minutes and 30 seconds each episode, because it's like a half-hour show. And each episode would be like a half hour. So I think of it in the way of like the way you build a TV show.
Okay. Yeah. Would YouTube ever be like something that would interest you to work with YouTube as a platform?
Definitely is a option, but it's not like the first choice, because you want to see if you can get it into the other avenues. Did you say why?
No, I said right.
Oh, right. Oh, I thought you said why. Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, it's definitely like a good option, but because of the sort of the length and of the episodes, and sort of the bigness of what I want to do with the show, I want a certain level budget and to be able to do it a certain way.
Yeah, there are like a variety of ways, because I'm aware of the TV series that I picked up a couple of years ago by Netflix. It's called Eastsiders. It's also like a queer TV series, and I think they started on YouTube because
Cool.
they got frustrated along the way, that it wasn't happening for them. So they released on YouTube, and then you know, it was absolute blast. They did a lot of like campaigning, Kickstarter campaign. A lot of people supported them, and then they got picked up by Netflix. So it was
Right.
almost like, you know, the other way around.
Yeah, the back door, through the back
Exactly.
door. They
Yes.
found their audience, and then yeah. I mean, sometimes you really literally have to like hand them everything on a silver platter and just be like, here's the product, here's the audience, here's everything. There's
We've
no
got
question.
everything.
There's no question mark whatsoever. Like, it's all there.
You don't have to do
Yeah.
anything. Like, it's done.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would, yeah. May I ask you something very personal? You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but do you feel safe in the States?
I don't know. It's getting like more and more repressive each and every day, I feel like. And people are talking about martial law and all this craziness. And, you know, my whole thing is like, you know, silence equals death. So I'm almost like ready to like put a rainbow flag on the flagpole of my front yard and be like, we're here, you know, like.
We exist. Woohoo.
But yeah, I do think that people are like, don't be a target. Just you know, kind of just
Be safe.
yeah, be safe or whatever. I mean, it doesn't, the headlines are kind of scary, and but I don't, you know, aside from like every once in a while seeing certain signs, you know, around the county, you know, it doesn't feel so different than last year, but like I had my Kamala Harris sign up for a while in front of my house when the election, you know, was going on. And then I left it up afterwards because there was this incident where I had bought a sign from the Democratic Party and I put it out there. And then a friend was visiting from Switzerland and I was telling her, you know, I kind of wanted to make my own handmade political signs, but you know, I just bought it. I was being lazy. And she's like, oh, let's paint some handmade signs. Let's just do it as an activity. You know, we're drinking wine and we're sitting by the fire and we're making these handmade signs. And we went out the next day with our like perfectly little handmade sign. And the one from the night before that I had put out was stolen. So I was like, oh my God. Like, we're going to make 10 signs now. We're not going to just put one. We're going to make, you know, because you would see sometimes in some yards, you would see multiple signs for like Trump. And I was just like, okay, we're going to do Harris, whatever. Kamala. So I was like, we're making a bunch and we're going to have a sign making party. So we got a few of us together and we all were painting signs and it was a little party. But I started nailing mine up as opposed to putting them in the ground, because then it was going to be much harder for them to take. And I left it up for a while and people were like, get that sign down. They're going to mess with you. And I was like, it's supposed to be a free country. We're supposed to be in a democratic, you know, freedom of speech situation here. They kept Trump signs up for 4 years after Biden won, like on, you know, all over the place, the Trump supporters. I never went and like messed with them and their signs. So why is it suddenly I'm a target and I'm in jeopardy because I have mine? So it's like, even on that fundamental level, it's very clear that things are changing in the United States and that you don't really know to what extent, you know, how safe you really are, because, you know, people are like actively leaving the country and being pulled out of universities for like being at the wrong protest or saying the wrong thing. And I did a screening of Misadventures actually at a university like 2 months ago. And there was a little bit of a Q&A afterwards, and somebody started talking about freedom of speech and if the trans and LGBT community started to come together, because obviously those rights are being taken back from the community right now in the US, and would the university support that? And the response from the university person there at the event was very shocking to me. They said, a few months ago, basically prior to the election, we would have supported this in a very different way. We support students actively congregating and speaking their minds, but we are going to follow the law. Like, the university will follow whatever the law of the land is. And I was just like, what are we saying? This is such a really terrible answer that's coming from the university representative on stage right now, you know.
It's
and
sad.
it's so sad. you're just like,
Really?
what? You're
Mm.
not gonna say, So I think that because of funding and because they know that there's consequences
Mhm.
potentially if they stand up against the current administration, people are folding like cowards, like so many places. And unless there's enough people to sort of stand up to what's going on, I think, we're going to be in for a few years of very difficult, dark times. Um,
Mm.
I don't know how dark, but yeah, it is kind of scary.
Mm. Well, I hope. Well, you know what? I think your superpower is really your art.
Yes.
And that's what it feels like. And that you are someone that you're not going to run over to the neighbor and, take their Trump thing out, the sign, but you will find a way to show them like there's a possibility to live together.
Yes.
Even if you have different point of views, you can
Yes.
still be friendly to each other. You can still, like, you don't have to hate each other. And I
Correct.
feel like that's where you are heading. I think it's beautiful. And you have change of scenery.
Yes.
Oh, tell us about that. Because there again, you are directing and writing, and I assume producing.
Yes. I
Uh,
did.
Do you have a
Yes.
co-producer there?
I had a producer, Parker Cowden, help to produce it. So when I write and direct, I try to always bring in a producer to sort of help with the producing. Change
Mm-hmm.
of scenery is a very personal story.
Mm.
So it's my own personal story, and I founded Thin Edge Films with Margot Pelletier, who ended up becoming my life partner. Margot passed away from cancer 8.5 years ago.
So
And
sorry.
so the story of Change of Scenery is about starting over after the loss of someone that you've lived with, and how you go back and start your life over again.
Mm.
Um, so it's sort of my personal story, and it has like a twist. It's not all depressing and sad. There's like some comedy to it. Um, yeah, so that's the story. It's a short that I made a few years ago, and it also went around the film festival circuit. But yeah,
Mhm.
Fabrizio edited it, and it's the regular cast of characters behind the scene in terms of
Mm.
the crew. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to
Because
ask you because you said that writing and directing is something that challenges you. I mean, in a good way, of course.
Yeah.
Is it something that you want to pursue further? Do you want to concentrate more on it, or
Yeah, I
things
mean,
come organically to you? How does
no,
this work?
definitely if I'm able to sell Misadventures, I don't really want to be the producer of it. I mean, Thin Edge Films can be the company, but I want other people like kind of producing behind the scenes behind me. And that way I can really focus with like a writing team and more on the creative end of it. And I don't have to like necessarily direct every episode or what have you, but I do want to have more of a creative say, because I think a lot of what ends up happening for me as a producer is like I often see things, and this was even true for this feature that I just produced called Ugly Ducklings here upstate that just wrapped, where you'll be on set and you'll be kind of like behind the director, and you sort of see something that could be like a little better, and you don't want to overstep your boundary, but every once in a while when I really feel it, and I'm like I have to say this, and then if they want to ignore it, it's fine. And I'm not that person that's like pushy, 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 like telling you what to do. But a
mm.
couple of times throughout the course of 3 weeks, I just whispered in the director's ear, like, you just might want to consider blah, 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 whatever. And then they can take it or leave it.
Mhm.
But I feel like when you're working on the like sort of the creative end of things, it's really like a completely different muscle. It's a different side of the brain. So the
Mm.
producing side, like I said, is very natural for me, and I'm like a problem solver, and I seem to be able to put out fires when they happen really quickly, or cut them off at the pass so they don't happen at all. Where, when you're being creative and writing and directing, um it's a really different thing. It's a really different side of the brain that you use.
Mm.
And I think the more I do it, the easier it'll become. And I'm probably a little bit like, I have to just prove myself even more, because people don't think of me necessarily automatically as a writer director. They think of, oh, Lisa, the producer. And
Mm.
it's that thing of um, where you have to believe it first yourself, and then other people see it and then can support it as well. And it always starts from you believing it yourself. I had this woman, Carol Dean. I'm going to show you because I brought these things to show you.
Please,
So
yes.
this is the Carol Dean Roy W. Dean Grant. This was one of the first awards that Margot and I won at the company for freeing Silvia Baraldini. And Carol Dean said to us, she said, "You'd be surprised how many filmmakers don't even call themselves filmmakers. They say, I kind of want to be a filmmaker, but I'm really a plumber. Or I want to be a filmmaker, but what I really do for a living is da 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 da." You know, and she's like, you have to be very like, you believe in yourself, and when you talk with people, you have to say, I am a filmmaker, writer, director. I am a producer, writer, director, or whatever, and just own it. Because if you don't own it, nobody else will ever believe it either. And so I think that's like a really important lesson for people. Yeah, even the cinematographer that I was just working with, young, very talented cinematographer on this feature, but is largely still doing another job and not doing the cinematography thing for a living fully. And so, you know, when he describes himself to people, he's still saying that he's in the trade industry and not like doing filmmaking full on. And I was like, you got to stop that, Charlie. Charlie, you got to just put yourself out there as Charlie the cinematographer. You're very talented. And if you own it, other people will see it and start hiring you more and more and more. So
I understand that though, because I was doing the same thing. I've transitioned from like legal and business side of things to filmmaking.
Yeah.
And it's silly, but for me, for a while, it was even difficult to change my description on like social media. I was literally struggling for weeks and months, and I was like changing the description and then not pressing save. I was like, no, but like I'm not really a full-time filmmaker. I've just did this one project. It's beautiful. I love it. But you know, can I call myself a filmmaker? Would it be, you know, compared to other? And it's all exists in my head because I think other people don't really like if you call yourself a filmmaker, nobody's gonna probably question it on purpose. Maybe some people will do, but most of it will just take it at face value, right?
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful piece of advice.
Yeah. I have a friend who's a screenwriter and has had, you know, trouble getting her screenplays produced. And so we were having dinner one night and she's like, I'm not really a screenwriter, like, because nobody's producing my work. And I was like, Renata, don't be silly. You have more scripts than anybody I know, and they're beautiful scripts. And one day, one of them is going to become like a blockbuster movie or whatever, you know, like this great independent film. Just keep believing in yourself and keep doing what you love, you know, like one day it's going to happen, you know, just you can't stop if that's what you love, you know.
Thank you for saying that because I think, like, as Valeria was saying, this is an obstacle that is in the way of so many creatives. And the reason why they're not being picked up, why they're not being seen, why they're not getting their work out there. Because if you don't, as you said, believe in yourself, it's hard to convince someone else to believe in you. So thank you so much for saying that because that is, and I struggled with it too. I have the same thing. I was like, in the beginning, I was like, oh, I'm just, am I an actor? Am I producing? Yeah, I am. I've done a few films. And I was like, what am I doing? It's the same thing. So that is beautiful. And if you're still listening, which I hope you are, our dear listeners, or watching us, Lisa is so amazing. Lisa, you have more. Before I say something, you have more things you want to show us. I think I would love to.
Oh, yeah. So I just took down, these are like my various, trophies, awards, or whatever. This is from a show I did called Xavier Renegade Angel, which was the only 3D animated show I did. But at the end of it, the studio that made the show created these little like trophies for us. I don't have like, anyway, Xavier is a really weird, surreal, new agey animation. Check it out if you get a chance. We did that in 2008. I did a bunch of music videos in the last few years. So this is an award from the Adirondack Film Festival 2021. I have a bunch of best music video awards. And this, This is like Little Miss Peanut here. See?
Oh,
Little
how
Miss Peanut.
cute.
I don't have an Oscar yet, but I'm the only producer director with Little Miss Peanut, okay? And she is a treasure, okay? So
In
Lisa,
some ways,
will
it's
we?
even better.
Yes. Will we get links to all of these? Like, it would be
yes,
amazing
yes,
for the
yes,
show
yes. I
notes.
just, you have, yes, you have, I have my little like shelf of, you have to put up the moments where you're celebrated to help you remember to keep going, right?
Yes.
So these are my
Yes.
little accolades. I always, people are like, have you got an Emmy yet for all the things? I'm like, not yet, but it's coming,
It's
like
coming. It's
it's
coming.
coming. It's coming
Yes.
soon, one day
Oh,
soon.
one day soon. But I think that's again what you're doing is you're really manifesting. First of all,
Yes.
you are living it. You are surrounding yourself with the art. And then you're making sure, as you said, that every step, like the wins, big, small, whatever, you're having it, you see it every day, which, as we know, this business can be hard, really hard. But you
Yeah.
see it, and you're like, okay, okay, girl, let's continue. We can do this.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And that's why I keep these around. It's not like, whatever. These are like life-changing moments per se, but like, when we won the Roy W. Dean Award, for example, it was not a cash award, but it was $60,000 of in-kind services and goods. So
Wow.
we got, film stock from Kodak, which we did all our reenactments with. We got film developing. We got post-production services, you name it. We had a lot of different things that we would have had to pay money to actually get those services for,
Yeah.
but instead they came through this grant and through Carol Dean's connections to these different companies that are in the industry. So yeah, sometimes it's not always about cash in hand. It's like being able to get a service that that you've won through a grant, or you've bartered, because there's been times where I'm like, literally, I'll make a budget for you if you do effects for me. I'm like on Misadventures, for example, I did somebody's produced budget for a project they independently were doing, and they did a few days of effects work for me. So sometimes you can barter your services with other people and the film community too.
Yeah, skill swap. That's nice.
Skill
Yeah.
swap. Skill swap, you guys. Do that too. Um, I want to ask you, what would you recommend, like if there's to the young girls out there that maybe want to become producers, writers, directors? Is there anything you would recommend for them, like how they could enter the business?
Yeah, it's a weird time to enter because of like all the changes with AI and everything, but I would say start with um what you have around you. Like really think about what you have access to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even just mean like your own backyard and your own apartment or your house that you live in, but like who are the people that will support your vision? And then create a project that is realizable within the means that you have, within the community support that you have. Don't write your first thing as the big blockbuster superhero movie that you can't make. Start with
Mm-hmm.
something small that's realizable and make that. And you can do it with your phone. I mean, you don't have to do it with your phone, but if the phone is the only thing you have, make it with your phone and make the best possible thing you can with the things that you have at your disposal.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Lisa, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your precious
Of course.
time. You've,
Of course,
we
of
know
course.
you're really busy and you have a lot of people approaching you all the time for producing and now in the future, directing and writing. Just saying.
Yes, definitely.
So that is amazing. If those that are listening want to reach out to you, where is the best way? How is the best way to reach out?
Yeah, so everything goes through Thin Edge Films. It's thin, like THIN Edge Films, not spinach, not so it's Thin Edge Films. There it is, Thin Edge Films. So there's an email, thinedgefilms@gmail. You can contact me through the website, through the Instagram. Yeah, it's all through the company.
Okay.
And yeah, that's how you find me.
And we will have that in the show notes, so you will be able to just click on that and write Lisa, which
Yes.
I would highly recommend. As you could hear today, that she has a lot of knowledge. And Valeria and I were just like, what can I ask her now? How can I pick her brain now? Like, I want to know more.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking me. It was a joy to talk with you both.